Chapter 5. There Be Dragons. Dragons had been common in Morena for so long as humans had inhabited the land. Some legends say they have existed much longer than the human beings have, and these ageless creatures have long lifespans. They hardly interact with people, but from time to time, here would be a dragon that had some personality issues for whatever sort of reason. Such a dragon typically liked to spirit princesses away for no other reason than to get publicized by the town crier and have someone battle them, and perhaps win some war wounds to prove their masculinity. Such a dragon was misunderstood Runty Gilgamesh. Gilgamesh was horribly bored. He wanted to rip his cave apart from ennui. He had heard other dooms of dragons speak of a fair princess in the land who was getting married to a man she abhorred. Wanting to assert himself and gain some credibility as the alpha male of his thunder, of which he currently had none. Apparently every dragon ridiculed him behind his back, and no females would ever come near him. He had few friends, and they were puny dragons like himself who were outcast. He made a claim that he would take the princess as his prize. This will gain me clout, he thought to himself, preening his scales at a lacuna in his craggy home. Sloughing off the old scales, Gilgamesh admired himself in the reflective lagoon. His yellow-gold scales shimmered in the moonlight. Using a stick and igniting it with his own flame, he lit the cavern and ventured out into the vale. Flapping his monstrous wings, the golden dragon took to the skies and followed the information he had heard from his brethren, and soared in search of Peri de Lee. Chapter 6. Princess Napping. It was simple to kidnap the princess than Gilgamesh had surmised. Many of the armored guards that typically protected the royal person day in and day out had been out in the front lines fighting valiantly for the king. They would soon return to the castle, but for now they were occupied, and the castle's defenses were down. Now it was the moment to advance and take advantage of lessened security. Sneakily, Gilgamesh stole the princess out of her bed. He was astonished at how lovely she was, even though she was warm-blooded and a mammal. He had to admit she was very alluring. Maybe he would keep her for company later on. All he truly cared about presently was making the other dragons see how rough and tumble he was. He wanted them to see how strong and ruthless he could be. After all, this was a princess he was kidnapping, no normal human being. She had power, authority, and could put many decrees into action. Quickly he took Paris into his claws and tenderly carried her out, spiriting her out of the window. By Odin, you certainly are a heavy sleeper, the dragon exclaimed softly as he took her back to the cave. Now all Gilgamesh had to do was wait. He had taken the customary courtesy of sending a letter via another dragon once he had written it. Contessa, slightly younger when compared to Gilgamesh, had been overjoyed to be in his presence, since the little purple fireling had a crush on him to begin with. She hoped maybe this would put him in her good graces, but alas, he didn't seem very impressed with her speedy delivery. Despite that, she received compensation from his trove and a grovelly thank you for work well done, and this was enough to sate her ego. Chapter 7. But I don't want to fight. Not too long after the kingdom had heard that the princess had been kidnapped by Gilgamesh the dragon, there was a reward offered once the princess was returned safely to her parents. Of course, as usual, Valiant was despondent and flip, and how he responded to the distress of his future wife, and honestly, in the cave, Paris wasn't really distressed after all. Gilgamesh and she had become fast friends, for her wit, music, and beauty had bewitched him. I have no desire to go out and save her. Let the dragon have her. Surely there is someone else in our line that I can wed. I have outgrown my taste for her, Valiant said with disgust. He was fickle, but he could have any woman he wanted if he desired. The only trouble was there were no other women in the Dali line that could strengthen the kingdom of Lysaea. Instead of going out to fight the dragon, Curio would raise his sword in battle in his stead. But I don't want to fight, sire. You're much better with a sword than I. That's why I was dubbed your servant, page, and messenger, Curio said, trembling as Bernard and the other servants suited him with heavy, clanking armor that Curio found impossible to walk in, let alone move. The sword at his side was Valiant's lucky blade, known as Bloodbane. Bloodbane would serve him well, at least that's what Valiant told him, without wavering or argument. Curio had no other choice. He had to obey his master, or be exiled, or worse, executed in the Tower of Treason. Thinking of that gave him goose pimples to infinity. With the aid of Valiant's trusted steed, Bramble, he sped into the place known as Dragon's Keep. This was no man's land, and only elves and other creatures more familiar with dragonkind typically lived there. Elves were friendly and could be of help, but none of them wanted to mess with a dragon coveting a princess. It was far too dangerous, even for them and their magics. Clanking his knees together in fear, Curio swallowed hard. "Gilgamesh! I am here to fight you! Come out, face my blade! I promise you it will be quick and painless. Or give me Princess Paris and we can all go about our lives like normal beings do." "I actually prefer the latter agreement," Curio said diplomatically. There was no answer from the cave, only lyre playing and laughter, the sonorous, deep laughter of a dragon. Suddenly another rider appeared. It was a peasant from the nearby village of Orontario. "You're from Orontario. I hardly see your kind around the castle gates," Curio said, looking at the brunette, hair tied back in a bow, steely gray eyes blazing with love and determination. Curio was still trembling, everything hidden under his armor except a shock of curly ginger hair poked out from under his visor. "Yea, knight, that I am. I see you carry Valiant's sword. I was hoping I would match steel with him today after I defeated Gilgamesh," Solomon said before he realized he was being prematurely victorious as well as overly confident. "You take on the beast, then. I am not made for combat. I am only a humble scribe and footman for the prince," Curio said as he tried sneaking away from the maw of the cave, clanking as he went. The prince would not be pleased or amused without having Gilgamesh's head on a platter. Valiant loathed dragons, even though human beings and dragons were allies. But Curio didn't care. He was about to be responsible for slaying a sacred creature. Solomon's gray eyes remained fixed on the mouth of the cave until he grew tired. "Just a minute, I'm recording, Daddy. I'll be right there, okay?" "Thank you." Solomon's gray eyes remained fixed on the mouth of the cave until he grew tired of waiting. Placing Wraith at his side, he marched in and saw the princess and the dragon engaging in meaningful conversation. "Odds bodkins, this is certainly queer," he said, completely dumbfounded. Paris stroked Gilgamesh's long snout and tickled him under his leathery chin, which made him thump his back leg contentedly, much like a dog would when scratched behind the ear. "You've come to save me, I take it," Paris said matter-of-factly. Solomon realized then and there he had to word his response extremely cautiously, or Paris would think he was chauvinistic. "I see you have everything under control and don't need my assistance," Solomon said with his large sparkling grin. Gilgamesh had forgotten his original purpose. He had been far happier with Paris in his company than a part of his treasure collection he had amassed over millennia's time. "You can both run along. I'm letting you go," Gilgamesh said generously, scooching Paris out with his massive talons. Paris motioned with her head that the two of them had to run before the spell wore off. Gilgamesh would still lack the memory of his original quest, but once they were gone, it was likely he would become upset that there had been bipeds in its territory. Since they didn't want to risk the possibility of getting their tukuses grilled, Solomon and Paris galloped away at midnight before the incantation Paris used wore off. "Where did you learn such magics?" Solomon asked before stopping in the forest of Valerian. "Like it or not, I often sneak into the castle library and read when Mom and Dad are busy with royal duties," Paris revealed with a sly smirk. There was a hint of rebellion in her, and Solomon felt it was a marvelous characteristic to bear. "Even though you didn't rescue me, I owe you this much, brave one," Paris stated gently, her voice reverent. Solomon felt his heart melt when the noble woman kissed his cheek. A surge of energy sizzled on his cheek from the contact her lips had given his flesh. "Until again, Solomon," Paris said with a glistening smile, hitching her skirts and running toward the castle. "Indeed, Princess, my love will wait however long it takes to be with you forever," Solomon vowed. His words resounded in her heart. Someday, Paris felt, the two of them would be married and could begin living a blissful life together. Yet presently their meetings would have to remain secret until Paris made her true intentions known to her parents.